Today you're going to learn the Nimzo-Indian setup. So the Nimzo-Indian setup is playable as black, and it's only playable of course if they play the move pawn to d4. You'll play knight f6, and let's say they get baited into playing c4, taking more space in the center. We'll play e6, so we're opening up this line for our dark squared bishop. And this opening can only be played if and only if they play the knight to c3 to try to take the entirety of the center. Now we'll play the move bishop to b4, stopping them from playing e4 because we are pinning their knight. Now, of course, there are many ways to deal with this move. The most straightforward of these are is the move pawn to a3, which is known as the Samisch Variation. We have to take, and we are giving them the bishop here, it is correct, but we have got these doubled pawns which we can work with. Now, the most ambitious way to play here is b6, and let's say they play like knight f3, then we can play like knight c6, so we play e3, and here you would think we will play bishop to b7, but that is not the correct way to play. The correct way here to play is to play the move to a6, the bishop to a6, and the reason is that we want to put pressure on the pawn on c4. Let's say they play bishop d3, now we can double down with the move knight to a5. And this pawn is very, very difficult to defend. Let's say they play queen to a4, or like queen to e2. We've got a lot of chances in many parts of the position. We can play moves like c5 to put this target in place and to fix it over there. And all in all, we're definitely fine. So, this was with the Samisch variation. Let's get into the next one. Let's say they would see the results of what happens if they play a3, and they get a bit scared. They say, okay, I'm gonna a bit retreat. I'm gonna essentially just develop this bishop. Okay, I'm gonna develop this bishop and break the pin, and I'm gonna take back with my bishop if you take. And whenever you see such moves, you simply can just castle. This is a very non-committal move. Let's say now they play a3. We're gonna take. We're not really bothered. And now we're gonna play again b6. This move is gonna happen a lot in this video because the structure is normally with the bishop on here, since it can't go over here because of the pawn on e6. So let's say they play knight f3, we'll play bishop back, bishop to b7. Let's say they play now e3, and now the main idea here is to jump over with the move knight to e4. This is that knight, the exact knight which was in the thumbnail, and is really untouchable. Let's say they play queen c2 to defend the bishop. And now we'll play d6, trying to possibly get the knight over here, and also preparing c5 ideas, maybe e5 in the future. There are many ideas with it, of course. Let's say they play bishop d3. In that case, we'll just play f5, and just catch this knight if you can. It really isn't easy. And let's say they just castle now. There are many ideas you can have. You can bring the knight over to f6. You can bring the rook here up and over to maybe h6, to maybe g6. You can maybe throw your pawns forward for an attack. There's just so many ideas you can do, and it all revolves around the king side because the pawns are moving this way, right? They're hitting this way, and also my bishop is looking at that way as well. So congratulations again, you now know how to play if they play bishop d2, a very passive move, of course. So let's say they see again the results of bishop to d2, and they say, okay, let me counterpin you, right? Let's say, okay, you can pin me, right? They'll realize they have free will, and then they play bishop g5. They're gonna pin you. Now, here we can simply play the move h6, and of course, comparing to the move a3, we're not gonna have double pawns if they take. Let's say they take, and now whatever they play, we can just simply continue with c5. And you may be a bit worried about the move pawn to e4, saying that, oh no, they got a whole center. It's nothing important, guys. Nothing important. We're just gonna play c5. And of course, you cannot push the pawn because of all this pressure on c3. Let's say they play e5, right? We don't have to really do much. We can just simply, for example, back down like this. And at the end, you have just too many weaknesses, and you also do not have your bishop. Let's say they do not take, rather, they just go back with bishop to h4. Now, we can play this move pawn to g5. Say, come on, get out of this. Get out of here. And we'll play knight e4. So we're essentially hitting this bishop, hitting this knight. There's a lot of pressure, and although the thing is that you may not really like to throw the pawns forward like this may not appeal to everyone, So if you do not really like that, you can just simply play the move pawn to c5, which almost always works as a device to put pressure on the pawn. So this was again with the bishop h4. So bishop g5 is also not really demanding at all. But now we're going to move into the mainline categories. Queen c2 is one of the most popular moves along with the move pawn to e3, which will be covered just a few minutes later. The idea of this move, just like bishop to d2, is to defend this knight. However, white does not really want to have this bishop on c3, rather it wants it to be active on g5 or on f4. That is the key difference. Again, here we can just simply castle. If we try to play a3, we're not really worried again, takes. And here there are two main moves. The old main line used to be the move pawn to b6, again, of course, as you know it, known as the Quieres defense. And the idea is to simply just play here with the knight, control the e4 square, and perhaps just throw the pawns in the center. So this is one way. However, after queen takes c3, one move got increased in popularity in the 2010s, not in the 2000s technically, which was the move pawn to d5. And of course these lines are a bit more difficult to play because you have to be very playing energetically. They've got the bishop here, meaning that if the position opens up and they finish their development, you will be very, very in a bad position. So exactly what black is exactly doing is to try to take advantage of their development lead. For example, here, let's say they play knight f3. There are many lines where you can just play something like c5. Not right now, c5 is not really that popular right now. Let's say you can play something like pawn takes, queen takes, and you will see this queen has moved 1 to 3 times already. That's not what you were thought. And now let's say they play b6, and it is all about just like with bishop g5, we can play bishop a6. That's the whole idea of this, to just hit as many, get as many tempos on the queen. But this is a bit difficult. Again, you can just stick with b6 and maybe play for c5, bishop b7, d6, c5. Maybe these structures are a lot easier to play. So I recommend playing with b6 and going on from there. So this was with the queen c2 line. Although, wait a second, I missed something. After queen to c2 and castles, you don't have to play a3. You can play something very natural like knight f3, which is sort of like a non-committal move. But, well, then I will also play this very non-committal move with b6, trying to get the bishop here. But let's say they play the move e4. This is a very critical test of our opening. And if you do not know your lines here, you're just simply going to get crushed. The right move here is to play the move pawn to d5. You just cannot let them have the center completely for themselves. You've got to strike back. And let's say now they're going to take more space. We're just going to jump forward because this knight is pinned, of course, and we're increasing the pressure on it. Let's say they play bishop d3, and you would get a bit worried, like, oh no, I'm going to lose a pawn over here. There is nothing to worry about, bozo. Let's play c5, come on. We're going to play c5, increase pressure over here, and again, you just cannot take because it takes. I'm just simply going to play c takes d4, and there's a lot of problems in your position. This does not work. So, let me just get over here. Bishop takes does not work. So after c5, the main move is this knight to f3 move. And here there's only one move again, which you have to know, and that is the move pawn takes on d5. Sorry, pawn takes on d4. You essentially just bring the knight over here, which means that it cannot see the pawn anymore. We'll play knight d7 hitting this pawn. Now, there are like a few ways. f4, of course, is very, very dangerous with queen h4 ideas. Or even knight c5, for example. But if you, for example, play this move bishop to f4, I can have this idea with the move queen to h4. Hitting on f2, you cannot play bishop back because I'll take, and then I'll take this knight over here in the center. So you got to play the move pawn to g3. And after that, I can just probably play queen h5, and now I'm again eyeing this pawn. Well, let's say they decided to just take, right? You're so worried about it, let's just cover it, right? Queen takes c4. Here, the lines are very, very simple. We can play this very easy move, queen to a5. We're putting pressure over here. We're also putting pressure over here. We're going to win our pawn back, and we're going to have a very, very nice position. Do not worry about it if you know your lines, which were sort of like what I just set out for you. So queen c2 is also out of the way. Let's get with the move pawn to e3. Pawn to e3 is known as the Rubinstein Variation. It's a very solid variation. You're simply trying to get these pieces out and castle short, castle short before doing anything about this bishop, or even going forward in the center. So here again, castles whenever they don't really do much, do not attack, you can just simply castle. And here, bishop d3 is the most popular move. Trying to edge for e4, I'm just going to simply stop that. And well, now the most popular response is to play the move knight to f3. There are two systems now. Again, you can choose between the b6 setup, which is also known as the Kmoch Variation, or you can just play the move c5, which to my knowledge is more popular than b6. Let's say the castle, and again, like you can just release the tension completely here. You can like play d takes, bishop takes, takes, right? This very crazily happens to transpose into the Kmoch variation of the Caro-Kann defense. I have also made a video about that I think like a month ago, I don't know. And you can do this, but you can also simply just trade once to c4 and then play the move knight d7. So the ideas are very, very interesting. You're trying to set up with the queen on c7, trying to put pressure over here. You're going to play your bishop over here, trying to put pressure here. And you're going to get your rooks on the c and d files. The game is going to be very, very interesting for you, of course. However, there's, of course, always another way you can play, as always is in chess. Let's say play b6 castles, we can play c5 now. So this is again known as the Kmoch Variation. In some lines you can sort of get hanging pawns, what's known as hanging pawns. Simply have to just chop everything off. You got two pawns with no neighbors, right? They're sort of known as a liability and also strength. If you can manage to pull them forward with precision. But if you try to push one of them, for example, you have to always be careful that this other square is going to be very weak. So this is sort of one way you can also play. I'm just giving you the information. You can just choose whatever you like. So here we're going to go into the final system, which is perhaps very demanding if you don't know how to play. This is the move f3. So you say, oh no, they're going to play the move e4. I'm just cooked. Oh no, what the hell is happening? No, it's simple. There's one line with the move pawn to b6, which is of course which you have to really be ready for a fight. They're going to play e4. You know, you have to perhaps find a way to just strike back, or maybe just stand in with this thing. Or you can just simply play some like castles. This is also, again, very, very like some lines with here in 98. I've seen such lines, and black is fine here, but you really have to be ready for a long and difficult fight. Objectively, you may be worse in many cases, but it's, again, fine. Why did I go back that much? Okay, f3. Again, you can play short castles, you can play anything you want, but the safest move, sort of, and the one which really is interesting is the move pawn to d5. It's very in the nature of Nimzo Indian as well. So you play d5, and well, here there are a few ways to play. For example, you can just play the move a3, say, okay, we're gonna get the bishop, we're gonna have a lot of center, right? But e4 is not possible for now. We can play the move pawn to c5, and if they decide to take, look at this, it's just a human semi-pawn here. You're going to play queen a5, you're going to take one of them at least, and the rest of them also move to fall one by one. But if you, like, for example, try to like take over here, take stays, you're also very fine here. The position really has got not much problems. You can play the move c5, and in many cases you just have play on the queen side. Let's say a line, for example, which was also played in the World Championship in 2013, I guess. Anand played this against Magnus Carlsen as a final attempt. So sort of the position was like this. You have, again, ideas to play bishop to a6 and knight to a5, all of them putting the pressure on this pawn, which is, of course, what we would always like. So that's it. Thanks for watching so far. I hope you learn something and can perhaps just use it in your later games. If you like this video, you will probably also like this one. This opening is also very similar to some lines in the Nimzo Indian. You get very dynamic play there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.